Hello, I am Naoli Vinaver, a Mexican midwife. In Mexico, we have a long tradition of being a midwife, not only of women who like birth or who get called as a neighbor to help another woman, but actually to receive the calling of being a midwife. I remember when I was 20 years old, I started dreaming every night about birth. And it was always I, the mother giving birth, the baby being born, and nobody else in those dreams. And every night there was something occurring at the birth, a challenge or a situation. I remember amniotic liquid just pouring out, a little arm coming out, blood, just different things that in my dream I was very aware that I was learning, that I didn't know it all. And I had to put all of my senses to help this baby and help this mother. You know how it is when you have no option. You're there, you're in the full presence, and I was doing it. And I was doing it with my intuition within my dream. Just feeling, what was needed to be done. And in the morning when I would wake up from these dreams, my awake mind would wonder if there was something else I could have done differently, or if there were options. My curious mind wanted to understand the physiology of what had happened. So, of course, I had these recurrent dreams every single night for 3 months, nonstop. And it wasn't even a conscious decision, I think I will study. No. In the morning, I would just run to the library or to the bookshop or, to find resources, and I started reading. I was trying to finish my thesis on anthropology. It was about dance and music and oral tradition, but I was being pulled, and I had to run first to understand my dreams, to understand if I was actually doing things right. So I started learning, studying and reading, and it was so intense and so focused that I didn't have time to question. It's like a river taking you, just had to swim. And anyway, that's how I actually was thrown into the world of birth. And as soon as this was happening, I started seeing pregnant women in the streets, and I started meeting midwives. Not that I didn't already have the passion for birth. Since I was born, I always took care of all the babies. Mothers would leave their babies with me. When I was 6 years old, they would go to Mluví, or they would go for a walk. 4 hours later, they would come back, and I'd be taking care of their baby. So I was a mother already with the calling for caring for babies. But as a midwife, is when I was 20. And of course, I started being the apprentice of different midwives because I started meeting them, and I was like, can I help you? Can you teach me? And they, of course, wanted a very eager person to be assisting them and accompanying and learning. The interesting thing is, I thought, that was probably something curious about my life. But once I was a midwife and I started organizing conferences in Mexico to bring together the traditional midwives from the tiny little towns far away, the rural areas of Mexico and Guatemala, out, they had to walk 4 hours, take a bus, and then sometimes ride a donkey to be able to get, 2 days later to the conference that I was organizing. They were really excited because midwives, when we work in rural Mexico, the way I worked, I grew up in the countryside. I was also a rural midwife for an indigenous community where I grew up. We are on our own. It gets lonely. We are working intensely, caring for the women and the families. And that was the case with all these other traditional midwives who were in their own regions that had, apprenticed with some of them, but many others had never really heard of other midwives sharing knowledge with each other. In fact, a lot of the traditional midwives are a little bit jealous of their recipes or their techniques because they feel that it was given by God and they guard it. However, when we were celebrating conferences together, it was beautiful. I asked one day, how many of you started your calling of a midwife through dreams? And out of 300 midwives, about a third raised their hands. I realized, oh my goodness, it's not a unique thing. It is a calling that life that life gives. And the women started talking. They were saying, when I started dreaming, I was really afraid and I didn't know what to do, but I was dreaming and it was not leaving me alone. And as long as I didn't obey my calling, I got sick. And that's something they all said, that if they weren't fulfilling the calling or their mission in life, they would be sick, they would be feeling unwell, they lacked energy for their life. And I forgot about it because, of course, I was a dedicated midwife until I had a period of time in which I stopped attending births. It was 1 year when I moved to Brazil. And out of respect for the local midwives, I didn't arrive attending births. I said, if you need me, call me. But in that period of time, I started feeling sick. I started feeling tired. I started feeling exhausted. Until the day that a Mexican woman insisted that I attend her birth. And as soon as I assisted her, my energy came back, and I remembered the midwives who don't obey their calling, because it is a gift that we're giving. Somehow that calling gives us the energy for our life. It's not just that we're generous and loving, which we are, but it is round. The energy cycle is round. You give everything you have, your gift. What you receive in return is life energy as well, to sustain your life, your growth, your spiritual connection to the universe. And it's a round cycle, the giving and the receiving. And that is why so many midwives, even if they get old and tired, they'll go to a birth. They'll have to go and hold the baby. They have to keep giving advice or support to women, because it is our calling. And that calling is not a decision made in the head. It is a response to a feeling, to an intuition, to a message. I think for different people it will manifest differently. But I like to say that it is the energy of life channeling and organizing itself to connect to your energy, your own energy, which is your life vital energy, and directing it. And when we are at a birth and it is challenging or difficult, and we may not know in our heads what to do, if we just relax and breathe, the answer comes. And I'm not considering myself a spiritual midwife per se, but I only say it because I've lived it. I get shivers. I feel the presence of all the old midwives there with me, silent, focused, and that makes us unafraid. Of course, after you've felt this company of the old ancestral midwives there with you, and what happens is you know what to do. It's not that your head knows, but it's like you feel it and you just surrender into it instead of becoming afraid and going into your head with panic. We know what to do, and women know what to do, and we have to remember that we know and go into the space inside that is connection. It's connection from above, it's connection with the woman, it's connection with the baby. It's this bubble of vital energy that we are there to preserve and to support. And this is the legacy of midwives, of traditional midwives, of midwives who are, in modern times, also trying to conquer again or reconnect to the roots of who we are as midwives. And we all have that. It's just we have to appease the mind and reconnect to that trust. And how do we do that? We talk with each other and we remind each other. And we feel much more than we think. Although thinking and feeling, it's even better. You have the whole spectrum together.